Another day, another dollar. How's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac, and I'm here with a video on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I wanted to talk about this movie again because I felt like I was really meat writing it when it first came out, and also because I really liked this movie, so I wanted to talk about it and watch it again. Plus, the first video that I made on this movie is my second most viewed video on my channel, so it seems like you guys liked it, and I liked it too, so why not give it one final go before the next movie comes out in 2024. So without further ado, let's begin with part 1, the intro. So the movie starts off with us being reintroduced to Gwen Stacy, aka Spider-Gwen, and seeing her in her timeline. So we see her just basically re-explaining what happened to Miles in Spider, and then being thrown into what we see now, where Gwen is just struggling to really get by. She doesn't have her friends. We learn about what happened to her Peter in this timeline, and he turned out to be the Lizard. He tried to be good, he tried to help people, and what we realize is that he actually knew about Gwen being Spider-Gwen. So with a lot of repressed emotions building up within her, on top of her dad being one of the main officers behind the Spider-Gwen investigation, because her dad found Spider-Gwen at the crime scene when Peter passed away. And so now it's just been a manhunt for her. And this is all just coming down on her. She can't handle it. And so when her dad tries to console her, he doesn't really see the full picture. And so when a villain, aka Vulture, starts coming through and messing up an art exhibit, we realize that this is where the movie's going to be going, with Gwen herself commenting on the fact that this Vulture is not the Vulture that she's used to fighting, because A, his art style is different, and B, he's French. This is not Toomes that we know. And this is where we get introduced to Miguel O'Hara and Jessica Drew, the people that handle the anomalies in the Spider Society, like Vulture showing up in this dimension when he shouldn't have. So the collider from Alchemax in the first movie went haywire, and it started causing all these crazy ruptures in time. And that's how Vulture started coming through, and other villains have been coming through. And so for over the past year and maybe some change, Miguel and the Spider Society have been taking care of this, because Miguel O'Hara has the future tech. He's 2099 Spider-Man. So who better outfitted to take care of this than him, right? And so he's just been recruiting a bunch of Spider-Men to help him deal with this whole ordeal. And so once they take care of Vulture, and Gwen is really beat up after having to save so many people with other Spider-Men to help her, her dad catches her. And so this is where we have a really sad and volatile moment. In this intro, it was rough. I'm gonna be honest. It was really hard to get through the first watch and the second watch as well, because it's just so much pure emotion. It's hard to really sit through and not feel for both of the parties involved. On top of that, the animation and just the colors throughout the entire scene, how they're bleeding onto the screen and it blurs out the background, truly amazing. And then on top of that, the music as well just really hits you. They want you to feel this scene. And this is only like 20 minutes into the movie. It's nuts. They have not shown their entire hand, and they make sure of that. So with all that being said, Gwen decides to go with Miguel and Jessica to the Spider Society. And with that marks the end of part 1 in the intro to the movie. And I gotta say, I like the way that they did it, because it feels like what happened with Kingdom Hearts 2, where you get introduced to Roxas, but then Sora is where you really start playing the game. That's what it feels like with this, because you go from Gwen to Miles, and we even have like a little time skip as well. Now we move on to part 2, Miles Morales. And with part 2, we get reintroduced to the New York that we know and love from the first movie. And here we get to see Miles swinging around doing his job as the new Spider-Man of this New York after Peter unfortunately passed away. And it's been a year and 4 months since the last movie, so he's really grown physically because he's going through puberty, but also as a Spider-Man, he's just grown as a person overall. And so when we also get introduced to the Spot, one of the villains of this movie, we get to see how Miles handles him. And even though it's like gags and fun or whatever, he's still taking this seriously because this is a criminal. But on the side, you also have him getting texts from his mother and father because they're at his school for a bunch of college interviews. And so this is where the double life of Spider-Man comes in for Miles, where it's also like with Gwen. People don't really understand you because you're not telling them that other part of your life, which people won't understand unless if you're another Spider-Man, which will make Spider-Verse so cool, because you have Spider-Man understanding each other, and them understanding like these are struggles that you go through, that you chose to go through. So once Miles handles the Spot, he goes over to the college interview. He says his piece on how he wants to study black holes and physics and just basically find a way to get to Gwen and all the other Spider-Men. And granted, his family doesn't know that, but that's what he wants to do. And so it's just him basically growing and spreading his wings. But he's still young, so his family's still there to take care of him. But once Miles notices that the spot is back out, he has to leave the meeting and deal with that. But also, Jeff himself, his dad, has to go leave the meeting as well. So that just leaves his mom there, right? And so Spider-Man and Jeff meet up, find the spot, and the spot gives this whole expose about who he is. What we learn is that he's an Alchemax scientist from the first movie. And so now that the spot gave that whole exposition, like, we're connected, we have to be. He kind of he kicks himself into a portal, and then he starts learning about how to use his portals. So meanwhile, Miles and Jeff think like, oh yeah, he's gone, he's probably not going to come back. So they have a heart to heart about what they should do about Miles, because granted, Jeff doesn't know that this is Miles, so he's just talking about his son and venting about it. And so once that whole spot business is done, Jeff goes back to his house. Him and his wife are having a great party because Jeff is going to become a captain, and Miles is tasked with getting the cake. But because he's still Spider-Man, he has other duties, so in between getting the cake, it just messes up. So once he gets there, they're all mad at him because A, he showed up late to his own meeting, B, he showed up late to his own dad's party, and C, he's not being honest with them. And so before he's able to tell them, he just stops himself and he's like, it's nothing, don't worry about it. So he goes into his room, he's grounded for 3 months, and he's just listening to music. When then we see Gwen show up, and they're just catching up, they're having a good time, and then they leave his room without his parents knowing. And so they're having a good time swinging around. But then we also see Gwen doing her Spider Society duties by planning some things in this universe. So what we can tell is that she isn't here because she wants to visit him. Partly, she's also here because she has something to do. So once Gwen and him meet back up, but outside of their spider uniforms, and they're just in the party, Miles' mom and dad both show up and they're just like, yo, who is this? What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And then Gwen leaves because this is a conversation between him and his parents, right? Also because she has something to do with the Spider Society. And this is one of my favorite scenes from the movie, where we have Miles' mom and Miles talking to each other. And it really encapsulates the theme of this movie, where no matter where you are, no matter if people accept you or not, remember that there's always people here who love you and that will always accept you. So keep that child that I love intact and never let people phase you. Understand who you are. And that message was really poignant, and it left Miles with something to think about. So once he leaves to go chase after Gwen, he realizes what's going on. The spot got even more dangerous. He started figuring out how to use his portals better and better. Now he's becoming more of an eldritch horror. And so once Gwen opens a portal to basically try to find him, Miles soon follows after her because she doesn't know that he's there. What I love about this section of the movie is that the setup, now looking back on it, is so good. You just have nice wholesome moments with Miles and his family. Even though he had to argue with them, he still loves them and he cares for them. He would do anything for his parents, for his family, for his friends. And so realizing what happens in the future, you really just get to see him be tested. Even though in the first movie he was also tested, you just see how far people push him in a position where you don't know what to do. You're the first person, one of one, to do what you've done. You have to forge your own path, and that's what Miles is doing. And so with the advice that he's given from people who may or may not understand, it really forms who he is. And so with this part, it just influences so much what happens in the movie, and I love it. On top of that, the animation is great, the music is great, the comedy is great. Overall, I really like this section, one of my favorite parts for sure. So now that Miles is following her, we move on to part 3, Mumbattan. So Mumbattan itself is actually a pretty short section of the movie, but it's a pretty impactful one because it shows what happens when you mess up. Even though in their heart it was right to do what they did, it still messed up, and it showed them the consequences of what happens if you let this happen. So once Miles and Gwen show up in Mumbattan, which is New York but with Indian influence, we get to meet Pavitra Pravarkar, this version of Spider-Man, and we get to meet all of the people that influence him. He's basically the good guy who can never do wrong type of Spider-Man. He's cool. Like, overall, he's just a cool dude. And so once they arrive, they have to stop the spot from getting to the Alchemax and getting the spot, right? And so on their way there, they also meet Hobie Brown, aka the British Spider-Man, and he's really cool. And just recognizing all these actors from other movies as well, it makes it even better. And once they get to the Alchemax and the spot starts taking that spot, things just start getting crazy. This is where we really get to see the horror of what the spot is, because he's basically an interdimensional being now. When before Miles was dissing him as a villain of the week, But now this man is a galactic threat. And when he ascends, we get to see a vision of what's going to happen to Miles, where his dad is going to get caught up with the Spot and he's going to die. This is going to be his canon event. And so once the Spot leaves and Miles realizes what's going on, he needs to leave. But Mumbattan starts falling apart. And it's all because of the Spot. So these 4 Spider-Men that are here have to deal with this before they do anything else. And so as Mumbattan is falling apart, everyone is helping out. They're doing what they can, saving everybody. And here's where another canon event is going to happen, where Paviter's girlfriend, her dad is going to die trying to save a child. But Miles manages to stop it, and this causes a disruption, aka an anomaly. And so while that's going on, the world is being corrupted. And so Jessica Drew shows up, and she takes all 4 of the Spider-Men to the Spider Society. I like Mumbattan because of the fact that compared to the other 2 New Yorks that we've seen from Gwen or from Miles, this New York is so drastically different. The culture, the atmosphere, the infrastructure, all of it is just different. But it still feels like New York, and I love that. And also the severity of what's going to happen. Even though we don't see Spot for the rest of the movie, we get to see how important he is to the story. And even though he's not the main villain of this movie, he's going to be a threat and he needs to be dealt with. On top of that, this is the last point in the movie where we feel like, yeah, we're at the high point, because it only goes down from here, not in terms of the movie, but in terms of Miles and his happiness, basically. And this is where part 3 ends, so we move on to part 4, the Spider Society. So with the Spider Society part of the movie, a lot of people have problems with it. For me, I can understand why, because you have the movie introducing the Spot and all of these Spider Society people, and you thought it would just coexist with each other. But the Spider Society ended up taking the rest of the movie, plus the Spot only had the first half, which to me, I don't mind. It's just more, a lot of people see that as a point of contention to hold against this movie. But for me, I think it's cool that we get 2 movies to basically fill out this entire plot, because I prefer that than having a rushed longer movie that didn't get to flesh out all the plot points that we got to see here. So once everybody gets to the Spider Society, we get to see all of the Spider-Man. Even Metro Boomin has a Spider-Man, bro. That's so fire. I still can't get over that. And so we just walk through the hallway. We get introduced to Spider-Bite, all these different Spider-Men, Lila, all these people, right? And once we get to Miguel, we get the full breakdown of what's going on. Miles got bit by a spider from a different universe, which means he wasn't meant to be Spider-Man. That version over there, that Miles was meant to be Spider-Man. But because of that, Miles is an anomaly, just like how the Spot is. So when the Spot was likening himself to Miles, it wasn't a stretch. They both are anomalies. So Miguel, putting it lightly, is just like, listen, your father is going to die because the Spot is going after him. That is your canon event. At this point, you gotta let it happen because you saw what happened in Mumbattan. But then Miles, harnessing his inner Spider-Man, is like, no, I am going to save people because that's what Spider-Man does. It's like that Spider-Man Edge of Time cutscene that got really popular after the movie came out. By the way, if I ever get the chance to do a playthrough of that game, I will 100% will, so don't worry about that. That game is fire. And so once Miguel hears this, he's like, yo, you don't got a choice, big dog. You're staying here no matter what. And so they trap him, but then you have Hobie who's like, yo, listen, big dog, use the palms. And so once Miles does that, he just basically books it. And so we also have Peter B. Parker come back as well, and Gwen, and they all find out like, yeah, these 2 were in it. Everybody was in it. They knew what they were going to do with Miles. Only person that didn't know was Miles, so he feels extremely betrayed. So for like the next 10 to 20 minutes, we just see like this crazy chase around Nueva York, which is Miguel's version of New York, right? And so once the chase starts nearing its end, Miles basically led all of the Spider Society away from the building to go back into the teleporter that sends him back home to his universe, right? And so he gets back into the building, and he manages to get into the portal itself, having Spider-Bite basically send him home while everybody else is there just watching once they get there. And so Miguel is furious. He sends Gwen home. He tells Peter B. Parker to leave. All this stuff. So him, Ben Reilly, and Jessica Drew go to find Miles. Let me tell you, part 4 of this movie is just crazy. You just feel so bad for Miles because this is a 15-year-old kid getting told by a grown man that you were a mistake. Miguel O'Hara is one of my favorite Spider-Men, if not my favorite looking Spider-Man. And they made him a straight villain in this movie. I know that there are good parts to him, but they haven't shown that yet. So people hate him, or they really like him because of how evil and how cool he is. But Miles just got the worst of it. A, he got betrayed by his friends. B, he got lied to, but now he understands what it's like to be lied to. So his parents are probably going to feel the same way, but they still love him, right? So now he's going to have more of a clear conscience once he tells his parents that he's Spider-Man, if he does. And C, he's getting chased by the world. It's literally him versus the world. Even though he has allies, they're kind of siding with Miguel at this point in the movie. So Miles right now is at the lowest point of his life, even lower than when Peter died in the first movie and he was trying to become Spider-Man. Like, this is low because Miles really has no way home until he gets to the portal, right? But then that leads us to part 5, the epilogue, and basically the prologue to Beyond the Spider-Verse. So with part 5, this marks the end of the movie, where we get to see Miles go back home, Gwen go back home, and we get to see the resolution between her and her dad. So that's nice. But then we also get to see Miles go talk to his mom, right, and try to tell her, like, yo, I'm Spider-Man, this is who I am. He built up the courage and he finally did it. But the twist, and I mean the craziest twist of this entire movie that was foreshadowed throughout the whole thing, was that Miles did not get sent back to his universe. He got sent to the universe where the spider that bit him originated from. So this is, I think, Earth 65 or something like that. I forgot what the planet itself was called. And the way that you can tell that it is in his universe is the contrast in the coloring. The universe that Mouse is in is a lot more purple and green, while the other one is red and black. And so when Gwen shows up in Miles' universe, you can tell the contrast compared to where Miles is. Because it starts brewing in your mind. Like, the first time I watched it, I can notice the contrast. And I thought that was so cool. But Gwen basically works up the courage to go help Miles. So she goes to talk to his parents. She tells him, like, yo, I'm sorry. I'm going to go find your son. He trusted me, and now it's time for me to work on that. So she manages to find Penny, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Bite, Hobie, Paviter, Peter B. Parker, and Spider-Ham, all these people, right, to go help Miles, because these are the people that care about him. So we're going to go find him. And once he realizes that this isn't Miles, he kidnaps him and he brings him over to where he hides all of his Prowler stuff, right? And this is where we get the reveal that the Miles that didn't get bit by the spider turned into the Prowler, because his dad in this universe is cooked. He died. So he had no guidance, no help. The only person that could help him was Uncle Aaron, and this is the one that was still the Prowler without Miles's influence. So with this marking the end of the movie, it was a real doozy for sure. Like, you're just left there contemplating, like, man, what just happened? How do you cook like this? And on top of that, you're left with the Am I Dreaming finale. Oh my goodness, that song, Metro Boomin, I don't know what he did, but he sprinkled like crack onto the track, bro. Because that is genuinely an amazing and addictive song. It's crazy. But overall, after having gone through the entire movie again, having watched it and really basically solidified my opinions of it, I don't think this movie is a 10. Would I retract the review that I did for this movie? No. That was more like my first impression of this movie and how I felt about it then. Now, I still think this movie is amazing. I genuinely think that this is a 9 to a 9.5, one of the best movies to come out this year, and probably one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. But I definitely don't think that this movie is a 10 out of 10 anymore. I feel like it does have its issues, some that I started to realize more and more. For me, it's more nitpicks, but other people genuinely have issues with it. And while a lot of people loved this movie when it came out, I can see why some people wouldn't. But for me, I genuinely just think it's a magical experience. Like, if you watch this movie when it was in theaters, it was unlike any other I've ever seen. And it just gets me even more hyped for when the other part of this movie comes out with Beyond the Spider-Verse, because I know it's just going to be even more magical. Because from what it feels like they took like a 5-hour entire film and split it in half. So I hope that that's what it's like. It's not just, we have the first part and we're going to make the second part. I hope it's just one giant thing that got split into two because it was so long. But overall, again, music is phenomenal. Animation is phenomenal. Voice acting is amazing. Generational. And this movie is just something that I can't recommend enough. So I will solidify that my opinion on this movie has decreased a little bit, but I still love this movie, and I will never, ever say that it's a bad movie. It is a 9 to a 9.5. So with that being said, thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed. Thank y'all for being so patient, for waiting for me to release a video. But I hope y'all enjoy. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.